Darwin ended up on the Beagle voyage more or less by accident. He was just down from university, 22 years old, really didn't know what he was going to do with the rest of his life. He was very restless. He was stuck at home because basically he couldn't afford to live anywhere else. He'd just been off on a geology field trip in Wales with one of his Cambridge professors. Got home to find his sisters very excited because a letter had arrived from another Cambridge professor, from John Stevens Henslow, offering Darwin the chance to go on an Admiralty surveying vessel, HMS Beagle, which was due to leave at the end of that year to go round the world surveying safe places for British ships to land, principally in South America. Henslow thought of it very much as an opportunity for Darwin to go off and expand on his understanding of the natural world, rather than thinking of Darwin as somebody who already knew how to do it all. First of all, Darwin had to persuade his father to let him go, and not just let him go, but actually pay for him to go on this voyage. It was originally supposed to last 2 years. In the end, Darwin was away for 5. His father had already paid for him to spend 6 years at university in Edinburgh and Cambridge, and was understandably reluctant, not just because of the cost, but because going off on a voyage like that was extremely dangerous. Darwin enlisted the help of one of his uncles, Josiah Wedgwood, who had great influence with his father. And we have letters exchanged between Josiah and Charles Darwin and his father Robert, where Darwin set out what his father's objections were to the voyage. It was going to be a waste of time and money. It would set back his career, whatever that turned out to be, and was just going to be useless. Josiah persuaded Robert that actually this was a great opportunity for his son, and eventually, after several months when it hung in the balance, Darwin got permission to go. He spent the few weeks before the voyage frantically packing, trying to fit in all the things that he could imagine he might need. He took a lot of advice about the best kinds of scientific equipment to take with him, but also, of course, he needed very practical things, a set of guns, for example, because he was going to spend quite a lot of time on land, and he would need to be able to both shoot animals for food and possibly even to defend himself. It's hard to imagine now what it must have been like to get on board that really quite tiny wooden ship with 70-odd other young men and just set off around the world. Very few maps, that's what the Beagle was going out to do, to create better maps of South America. And no way of communicating, of course, except by sending letters back, which took months to arrive. So Darwin's family didn't hear from him until the following spring, and he left in December. While he was on board, Darwin lived and worked in a tiny cabin that he shared with 2 other men. Every night he had to sling his hammock above the chart table where they kept the maps and the plans. All his work on specimens had to be done there as well. It was extremely cramped. His scientific instruments would have been there, and many, many books that not just Darwin, but other members of the crew had taken with them. Darwin was immediately excited by everything that he saw, both in the sea and on the land, and he set about collecting specimens of everything you could possibly think of. He cluttered up the Beagle's decks with boxes and barrels of specimens. He had to learn how to observe closely, to collect and to preserve. No refrigeration, couldn't stick things in the fridge, and chemicals were fairly limited as well. So he used barrels that the ship had its food stores in. He used vinegar and spirits, the rum that the sailors otherwise would quite have liked to have drunk, to preserve plants and animals that he was sending back. Darwin's primary interest was actually in the landscape and the rocks and the soils and the fossils that he saw around him, the geology, rather than the plants or the animals. This was an incredible adventure for any young man, and Darwin thoroughly enjoyed the strangeness and lushness of the tropical forests and the beauty of the mountains. It was also, however, extremely dangerous. Many of the Beagle crew died quite soon after they arrived in South America from malaria. Nobody understood what caused it at the time. Darwin himself several times was very ill, and once at least came very close to dying. And it wasn't just disease. The natural world was a very dangerous place to be. when they were going through the Beagle Channel, right at the southern tip of South America, they'd gone exploring up a narrow backwater and had pulled their boats up onto the shore. Darwin noticed that a large chunk of one of the glaciers was about to fall into the sea. It caused a massive tidal wave, and they were only just in time to drag their boats further up. If they hadn't managed to do that, they'd have been stranded. He had relied on letters for news from home and got lots and lots of gossip from his sisters about family and friends and politics back in England. So the Beagle became a sort of mobile lab for collecting and analysing specimens. Geological hammer like this one here for collecting the rock samples, and then various instruments and chemicals for analysing them. In some ways, his best scientific instrument was himself. These are all rocks that Darwin has tasted. He used all his 5 senses to help identify the specimens that he was collecting. So, of magnesia, he said it's a fine, greasy clay. Between the teeth, soapy taste and feel. The Beagle Voyage was the most important event of Darwin's career, and it made his reputation even before he got home. The huge number of finds and specimens that he sent back kept experts busy for years, but some of the major finds, the huge fossil mammals from South America, like this Megatherium, went on display. And Darwin was actually rather surprised to find that he was a bit of a celebrity by the time he got home. The many thousands of specimens that Darwin collected of plants and animals and birds and fish and insects and fossils came back to Henslow in Cambridge. They were then sent out to experts who spent many years working on them, analysing them, identifying them. It was one of the ways in which Darwin built up a network of scientific collaborators who shared his discoveries for the rest of his life.